Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled People Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. My niece has been getting paid to spy on me. After that, a wild Karen gets banned from a hardware store and I get free food. And after that, yes sir. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen has to drink a 12-pack of Mountain Dew. Hey, now you're talking, Reddit boy. Diet Mountain Dew. I knew it was too good to be true. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My niece has been getting paid to spy on me. I broke up with my ex after I found out I was pregnant because of how he behaved when I told him. I was living with him at the time, so I moved in with my brother and his family until I could find my own place. My pregnancy has been extremely rough and my ex wouldn't leave me alone. So my sister-in-law insisted I stay with them for the duration of my pregnancy so that they could make sure I was okay. My brother has a 15-year-old daughter called Amelia. We're very close since I used to babysit her all the time when she was younger. My sister-in-law found out that Amelia has been sending my ex information about me since I moved in with them. When I asked Amelia why she would do something like that, she started crying and said she did it because she overheard me telling her parents that I miss my ex, and that when he first asked for her help, he said the same thing to her, and that he was just worried about me and the baby, so she thought she was helping us. My brother was upset and yelled at her for what she did, and made sure she showed us her phone to see what she had sent to him. From the messages, we found out that she was giving him information, pictures, and videos of me in exchange for money. My brother ended up making her give me all of the money she made from spying on me and grounded her. A few days later, it was just me and her home. She came up to me and begged me to give her the money back because she was saving to take these expensive art classes that her parents couldn't afford. She kept saying she was sorry and that she didn't do any of this to hurt me. I ended up telling her I wouldn't give her the money back, which made her cry again. I did confront my ex about it, but he was not apologetic at all and told me I should have let her keep the money since she was just a kid and this was all of his doing, not hers. He also said he wouldn't have had to resort to this if I had just spoken to him myself like an adult. Am I the jerk? A wild Karen gets banned from a hardware store and I get free food. This happened in Australia a while ago. This occurred just before our first lockdown and there were mandatory requirements when shopping at retail stores. For context, in high school and all throughout university, college for you Americans, I worked at a mom-and-pop hardware store, so I know my way around hardware. Please note that in our big box hardware stores, there isn't much customer service. Most staff are there to check on stock levels, stock shelves, and attend the cash register. The old warhorses, staff, are always occupied helping people, but they are in short supply. So it's a Saturday and I need some plumbing supplies. I'm in one of the most intimidating aisles for a lot of people. It's got all the copper, tap, and toilet fittings. I've got all the items I need and I've been there a good 20 minutes. I can see an older gentleman struggling and trying to work out what he needs. I catch his eye and he waves me over enthusiastically. I grab what he needs for a leaky cistern and instruct him on how to install it. He thanks me and he leaves. As I'm about to leave, another old gentleman waves at me and asks me for help. I show him a direct replacement for his tap washes, but then proceed to show him a ceramic fitting that basically makes sure he never has to replace washes again. He balks at the price, but I convince him to get it. Once a salesman, always a salesman. Plus, he gets a senior discount. As I'm about to leave with the gentleman, a wild Karen appears from behind me, silent as a mouse. But mousy she is not. She's dumpy, she's middle-aged, big bushy brown hair, and face that's caked in makeup, screeching at me. Oi, you! I want these items. As I turn, she shoves a list in my face. Now, if she had smiled at me and asked politely, I would have been happy to help her. But forget that noise. I smile and politely decline. Sorry, I don't work here, indicating my clothes. I've got a blue singlet on, blue cargo shorts, pockets full with plumbing products. Staff wear red and green. So I turn and proceed to leave. Karen reaches out her claw-like hand and tries to turn me towards her, but I slip out of her grasp. You helped him? Indicating the old fella still standing next to me. You work here. Don't lie to me, she screams. Ma'am, I don't work here. I attempt my best withering gaze. I'll let the counter know you need help and they will send someone along. I make a hasty retreat with the old gentleman. Karen's hot on my tail, screaming at the top of her lungs, calling me some really inappropriate names and saying that I'm a jerk, besides other things. I've ignored her, and I think this has infuriated her even more. She tried a couple of times to get a hold of me, but I've struggled it off, once of which she loses her footing and trips. This enables me to get the heck out of Dodge. I can hear her lumbering along on my heels, screeching like a velociraptor. A member of staff, let's call her S, intercepts Karen and asks her to stop screaming. Karen points to me and starts ranting about me, calling me names, making up a story about me being rude and assaulting her. Clearly, as soon as she says assault, the situation has now escalated and she's in for a very big surprise. S turns to me and rolls her eyes. She knows this is going to be a long one. I do too. I turn to the old gentleman and tell him to get in line because this is going to be a while. He tells me it's fine. I'll need a witness. My heart bursts a little. So security gets called. I have a quick conversation with the manager and relay the events that have unfolded. The old man relays the same thing. I also indicate that there are multiple security cameras around the place. I ask the manager if she can remind Karen that there are multiple security cameras around. Police get called anyways, and unlucky for her, no time to recant, there is already a patrol car in the parking lot. They just had lunch. They isolate us, me, the old fellow, and Karen, and do a quick interview. So I'm chilling in the office, 60-ish minutes. Officers come in and have reviewed the tapes and ask if I want to press any charges. I declined and they let me go. Manager is waiting for me and walks me to the checkout. Lets me know Karen is getting a lifetime ban. Didn't know they even did that. I pay for my plumbing supplies with a trade discount. As I'm walking to the exit, I see old fella sitting on the bench. He gets up and asks me if I want a sausage. We have a good laugh over sausage with onions and a Coke. I offer to come over and fit the tap washes for him, and we organize a time for tomorrow morning for me to drop by. He actually only lives a street away from me. As I'm getting in my car, Karen emerges with the cops and the manager. She looks distressed, at least she's not in cuffs. I know she's not got many options, so I drive by as she's talking to someone on the phone and wind down my window. Hey, see across the road, the sign that says the name of the store? They're a trade plumbing supply store. If you go there and don't be a jerk, they will have everything on your list. Yes, sir. About 15 years ago, I was in the Army, and I had what we'll call a very unique skill set. There were several people in my unit with that specific skill set, but for some odd reason, all of the hot 20 to 26-year-old ladies got Monday through Thursday shifts and had Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off, while guys like me got Thursday through Monday night shift, despite having seniority over some of the ladies in both rank and time on mission. To make things worse, administrative staff like our commanding officer and platoon sergeant, bosses, worked Monday through Friday and weren't willing to budge on us being active during their work hours. This meant that quarterly training, like PowerPoints we had to watch for harassment, typically occurred both on my day off and in the middle of my sleep time. Given that I worked 16-hour shifts and the round trip to base was an hour, I was perpetually sleep deprived. Even if I got off of work on time and went straight home, I could get optimistically 6 hours of sleep per day between driving, eating, and showering. This went on for years over my objections. I literally went nearly 2 years without a day off concurrently with my wife, a day worker. Interestingly, the Army did a study demonstrating that after around 18 hours of consciousness, you make the same number of stupid and careless mistakes as if you were legally intoxicated. Sadly, no one told my platoon sergeant, aka my boss. He decided that sleep deprivation didn't matter. In fact, one day when I was transitioning from a junior enlisted, technically a specialist, but if you're not familiar with Army ranks, think private, to an NCO, sergeant, my platoon sergeant decided I needed some NCO responsibilities. Reasonable. We were having a range day. We had to qualify annually, and we needed a duty driver to shuttle soldiers back and forth from the barracks. I was voluntold. Suffice it to say that I was on loan to a certain agency, and I needed to put in an ops release to miss work. It was rejected due to staffing issues. At the time, there was no one else available that could do a certain thing that I could do. I told my platoon sergeant, and he informed me that the ops release was a courtesy. I was going, and it would only take 8 to 10 hours. But Sergeant, I tried to explain, I worked 16 hours straight leading up to the start of this driving, and I'd have to work another 14 straight hours at the end of it. On top of that, As driver, I'd be driving soldiers down winding roads I'm not familiar with in a van bigger than anything I've ever driven before while half asleep. Then, at the end of what would be a 40-hour shift, I'd need to drive 30 minutes to get home. Does that seem safe?
Safe? Specialist, do you think the soldiers overseas are safe right now?
As I said, about 15 years ago. Well, no, but at least they're getting hazard pay.
You're dismissed, Specialist.
So, what could I do? I only fell asleep twice while driving, and both times were at stoplights. I also made every single passenger aware of my sleep situation. Keep in mind, I was already sleep deprived coming into this, so they made sure to chat with me, bring me coffee, and do other things that decreased their chances of getting hurt that day. Around hour 38 of this, around 40-hour shift, an important person swung by my place of duty to check on something. I was literally standing up, leaning against a cubicle, eyes basically asleep, with 4 empty quad coffees. If Starbucks had a size above venti, it would be quad. Sitting on my desk, per tradition, there was an NCO with the officer. I got chewed out backwards, forwards, sideways, upside down, and in dimensions I was not hitherto aware of. By military protocol, the NCO beside the angry officer did the chewing out. He threatened me with the actual dereliction of duty charges as well. This ended with,
"Now explain to me, Specialist, why on God's green earth you think it's okay to sleep on duty?"
So I explained to him that I was literally semi-conscious on my feet. I'd drunk so much coffee, I'd started having heart palpitations and decided to stop, and that it was hour 38 on duty and I was simply at my limits. I cannot stress enough that important people cared about what I was doing. A lot. Really important people. At this point, the officer stepped in. "You've been doing this for 38 straight hours?" So I explained to her how I'd had to drive a van around during my sleep time, and this important mission had informed my unit that I was irreplaceable. But my unit decided it was crucial that, specifically the guy with the irreplaceable skill set who was working shift, be the duty driver that day. I further explained how this wasn't that uncommon. I couldn't even remember the last time I had had a week where I was allowed to sleep during my sleep time for the entire week uninterrupted. The number of silly things that I had to do instead of sleeping was mind-boggling. "Who is your commissioning officer?" I tried not to smile and told her. "Carry on, Specialist." Needless to say, by lunchtime, aka the equivalent of maybe 1 a.m. for me, I got a phone call. "Report to the platoon sergeant's office right now." I sighed. To say that I was sleepy was something of an understatement. And keep in mind, I got home around 8 a.m. and had to work again around 4 p.m. The round trip to base alone would take an hour, plus I had to get dressed, be presentable, and deal with their nonsense. Then undressed again afterwards, then dressed again and drive back.
"Please explain to me why the command sergeant major just chewed me out over our in-house scheduling decisions."
So I told him what happened.
"You told them that?"
Should I have lied to my mission commander about my level of readiness, Sergeant? He turned red, like Santa's cheeks. Not a Norse berserker. No berserker-like traits at all. Nope, I took a totally professional step backwards. He was about 6'2" and 250 pounds of NCO. And I felt like I was hogging all of his oxygen.
"Get out."
So I did. It came down from on high that our unit was to have 2 quarterly training days henceforth. No more waking us shift workers up 1 to 2 times per week, every week for administrative crap, period. All missions were informed that our soldiers would be doing one of the 2 training days, pick one. Happy ending, right? Yeah, that's never how it works in the military when you get someone above you in trouble. What's the nastiest, stupidest duty you can imagine giving someone that was stateside in a strategic unit? The urinalysis guy. For those of you that don't know, it's his duty to plan and execute urinalysis. This requires literally monitoring your fellow soldiers because there's a variety of products that can fool the urinalysis, and the only way to, you know what, just trust me, it's nasty. Fortunately, there was a loophole. You see, the powers that be are aware of the good old boys system that develops sometimes in the army, and it's really, really important that the guys with weapons aren't on anything. As a result, per regs, as they existed at that time, and maybe even now, if the urinalysis guy calls a urinalysis, it takes a full bird colonel to cancel it. That's 1 step down from a general. That's right, when the urinalysis guy decides it's time for the monthly urinalysis, wake up, get in uniform, drive to where he says it's happening, and God help you if you've got alcohol or something in your system. To make matters worse, for them, a friend of mine, let's call him Kroger, had been punished for having alcohol in his system during one of their urinalysis. It was on his day off because he was a shift worker, and it was during hours that were duty hours to the day workers, but off duty for us. I had about a year left, no intention of re-enlisting, and my unit had already been slapped down by angry people for messing with me. Let's do this. Malicious compliance time. Imagine this. It's 11 p.m. on a Friday on a long weekend. Long for them, not me. You see, shift workers didn't get holidays off unless we took leave, and I needed mine for family time, like Thanksgiving and Christmas, because without it, I'd have been working every single holiday. The mission must go on after all. Now, anyone that's ever seen an army movie knows that Joes like booze, and anyone that's ever had to deal with a urinalysis knows that they can detect alcohol. Mind you, being a urinalysis guy is a big deal. You're on legal orders and everything, entered into Big Army's database. Between the time I began the formal process of calling a urinalysis and the time I would have had them coming in, around 3 a.m. on their days off, since they had established the precedent that soldiers don't get days off whenever we complained about losing sleep to stuff like this, my orders vanished. To this day, I don't know how they did it. I suspect that our CO or some other bigwigs were at a party or something and realized that they were about to have to explain to a full-bird colonel how half of their unit popped hot on a urinalysis, which would have required, legally required, that colonel having a one-on-one chat with me about why I chose that time and perhaps a discussion about how the unit was being run. Yeah, they never gave me another duty the entire time I had left in the Army. I never had issue with another leave request, and they generally just left me alone. At the time, I thought it was because I'd made my point that I was sick of their crap, but looking back, I wonder who would have come up positive for what specific things during that surprise urinalysis, such that they were able to rescind my big Army orders in less than one day and in the middle of the night at that. Neighbor thinks he's entitled to take our fence down. I rent a house with my sister and brother-in-law, as well as my hubby and kids. At the time of this, I only had the one kid, and it's only my sister and I in this story. The neighbor isn't so much of a neighbor, but a guy who bought the house next door, tore it down, and built two of those skinny houses. I can't remember what they're called. Property investors, developers, I have no idea. It was summer, so my sister and I were out in our backyard with my daughter playing around when this guy pops his head over the fence and asks if we can talk. I don't like talking to people, so my sister went up to him to see what was up. Guy:
Hey, I'm so-and-so. Do you live here?
Sister: Yes, we do.
Great. I own these two houses next door, and I'm trying to get them ready to put on the market. I have guys coming to build a fence, and I was hoping you'd be okay with me having them rebuild this side of your fence as well. I'll cover the costs of everything.
Sister: That sounds great, but unfortunately, we don't own the place, we rent, so you'll have to call my landlord. I can give you his info. Guy, looking slightly frustrated:
Okay.
My sister gives him our landlord's number and he leaves. We send off a quick text to our landlord to let him know what happened and that someone would be calling him about the fence. Landlord was game, as he didn't have to pay for anything, but had a feeling the guy would want to change the fence style, so definitely wanted to talk to him about it. A little over a week later, it was morning. I let my dogs out and went to make my daughter breakfast. I was about to start when the doorbell rang. There was a guy dressed in construction gear. I opened the door, and before I can say hello, he goes, "Construction dude."
You need to get your dogs inside.
Me: And why is that? Construction dude:
Because we're here to take the fence down, and we can't do that with the dogs out there.
Me: Oh, sorry. I didn't realize everything had been all sorted out. No one notified me. Yeah, I'll get them in. I close the door, and as I'm about to head to the back door, a thought crosses my mind that maybe I should confirm everything with my landlord. Well, good thing I did, because he had not received one call from anyone about the fence. Not even a missed call from a number he didn't recognize. Nothing. At this point, my sister was awake, and I had continued to leave my dogs outside. My landlord suggested for the supervisor and asking him to have the guy who hired him call my landlord. I forgot to mention, totally important though, my landlord owns the whole fence. Even though it's technically a shared fence, he's the one who owns it completely. They need my landlord's permission to take it down or face destruction of property charges. I don't even have a chance to finish writing my landlord's number down before there's another knock on my door. My sister answers this time. Construction dude:
You need to get the dogs inside.
Sister: You need permission to be here. My landlord just informed us that he had no idea anyone was coming to take the fence down today or any day,
which is pretty concerning since he's the one that owns the fence. Construction dude. I don't know anything about that. Sister. I get that. That's why I need to talk to the supervisor. I can give him landlord's number and we can get all of this cleared up. My sister then goes to talk to the supervisor. I stayed inside with my daughter, dog still outside. My sister comes back and says the supervisor was going to call the guy who owns the houses to get him to call our landlord. About 20 minutes go by when construction dude comes back. Everything has been cleared up. Could you get the dogs in now? Sister. Yes, we can. Thank you. I let the dogs in and my sister and I go about our day. I should have called my landlord to confirm a second time. About an hour later, I get a text from my landlord. Landlord. Hey, no one's called me yet. Are the construction guys still there? When I tell you my heart was in my stomach and throat all at the same time, I quickly call him. Me. Oh my gosh. You need to get down here. I'm so sorry. The construction dude came to the door and said they worked everything out with you and were given the go-ahead to start working. I should have called you again, but I didn't even think. I'm so sorry, so sorry. Landlord. Whoa, it's okay. It's not your fault. You shouldn't even have to be dealing with any of this. The guy should have called me as soon as you said you didn't own the place. Can you do me a favor though? Go see how much of the fence they tore down and take pictures, please. Me. Yeah, I can do that. Landlord. Awesome. Send them to me as soon as you have the pictures. I'm on my way. I then go out back to have a smoke and pretend I'm playing on my phone while getting pictures. They had already taken down the majority of the fence, and the only parts left was the frame about halfway down. I sent the pictures off to my landlord, then went inside to wait till he got there. Now, reader, if you haven't already figured out, my landlord is a super calm guy. He knows his laws and knew this was going to go his way no matter how it played out. When he got to the house, he walked up to the supervisor with a smile on his face. Everything that follows was told to me by landlord after he was done talking. I'm trying to remember this as best I can. So landlord went to the supervisor. Landlord. Hey, I'm C. I own this house here, and this happens to be my fence you're currently tearing apart. Supervisor. Eyes go a bit wide. Oh, we had permission to… Landlord. No, you had permission from no one. No one with the authority to give you permission anyway. I also know for a fact my tenant told you that you needed to have your client call me. Supervisor. I called him, and he said he didn't need to do that, and that everything was good to go. He's already had your permission. Landlord. Then I suggest you call him up for me, please. Supervisor calls the guy and explains that my landlord was there and wanted to talk to him. Landlord. Hey there, it's C. I'm the guy that owns the house that you're currently destroying the fence off. I'm just wondering why you thought you had permission to tear apart my fence. Guy. Oh, I didn't realize the house was owned by someone else. The girl I talked to said I could go ahead and replace the fence. Landlord laughs. No, she didn't. She told you that she didn't own the place and you needed to call me. Even gave you my number. Guy. Now that's not true. Landlord. Just don't. I trust my tenants more than I trust you. So stop with this, and instead, let's talk about the fence. I want my fence back the way it was. Guy. I was of course going to put the fence back. I was going to change the style a bit. Is that all right? Landlord. No, it's not. Had you called me, you and I could have worked out a new style of fence. All I would have asked is that you at least look similar to the rest of my fence. Now, if you want a new fence, you can pay to have my whole fence replaced to look the same. Guy. Okay, I'll have the fence redone the way it was. Landlord. Sounds great. Also, don't forget, the nice side faces me. We all then had a good laugh about how everything played out. Before leaving, my landlord asked if we needed them to do anything to make all this easier on us, since we were the ones living here. We asked that he have them bring in a temporary fence so that we could still let the dogs out. Landlord said he would make sure they brought one in at the expense of the guy, of course. You may think this is the end, but it's not. A temporary fence was brought in, essentially these huge metal panels held together by a metal connector at the bottom and zip ties. We didn't care, it worked. They built the fence, but they left a huge gap between the sidewalk in the backyard and the fence, about a foot deep and wide enough that I could fit my whole leg in it, no problem. They also left the temporary fence for 2 weeks until my dad took it apart and heaved it over the fence. Also, my front gate had to be taken apart, and instead of building it the way it was originally, it was connected to fence, went as wide as sidewalk, but then another little bit of fence was built to connect it to the house. Instead, they built me a barn door instead of a gate. So heavy that it leans, so I have to lift it every time I go to open it, or else it's hard to get it unlocked. I also don't have sidewalk where the new lock was. It dipped down into a rock bed where I would be too short to even reach the lock. Called my landlord, and he had the guy have the workers come back twice, once to pack the gap they left behind, and then the second time so they could add paving stones to the rock bed so that I could reach the lock. Again, this was all done on the guy's dime, and when he tried to complain about it, my landlord reminded him that this could have gone a whole other way and be costing him a lot more money. Also, that he could make him have them rebuild the gate to the original instead of just fixing the problems they created. Hope you guys enjoyed. Am I the jerk for telling my boyfriend I don't want to spend time with his family? I went to meet my boyfriend's family for the first time, and it was a weird vibe. First, his brother, who was in a similar field of work, started quizzing me on my work like it was a job interview. I ended up joking that I don't talk shop unless I'm getting paid for it. After that went on for a while. He asked me, kinda rudely, if I just got into that field to meet a wealthy man. My boyfriend and his family are wealthy, so I said that I was in it to out-earn the wealthy man. Another joke, or half joke at least. I like my financial independence. Next, his cousins asked me if I was a workaholic, like some ex of some guy in the family who was never home and never did her household chores. I said, nah, I'm out of work at 5 on the dot. I care a lot about a good work-life balance. Then they were saying I was such a millennial, which I don't know what they even meant by that. There was more, but overall it felt like a job interview or an interrogation rather than a social event. It felt like I was being asked questions and set up to be judged. I left early after a conversation with his mom, who was asking me about my homemaking skills and not really liking my answers that my boyfriend is the better cook, and before I met him, I was eating too much takeout, but he's teaching me how to cook. His mom made a comment about how, in her day, the ladies brought something special to the table. I kinda tried to play it off as a joke, saying that I bring him beer, but it really didn't land. Anyway, I headed out early and he stayed that night. But as soon as he left too, he wanted to talk about why I had dipped super early. I said I felt like I was being interviewed for a job of being a good wifey instead of just meeting people socially. And I feel like that's not something I enjoy. I like hanging out with people who are chill and accepting. He said he felt like they were just being protective and trying to make sure he was ending up with a good partner, and they meant well. And they are like that whenever a new partner gets introduced, but they warm up to people quick. That every lady in the family had been questioned a bit and bond over it later on. I said I already know I'm a catch, and honestly, they were disrespecting us both. Me by making judgy comments, and him by not trusting him to pick a good partner himself. I said that I didn't feel like going for Thanksgiving or Christmas anymore, unless some people apologize and agree to not do this weird hazing stuff again. He said that he felt like I was being unreasonable. I should give them another chance at Thanksgiving. I feel like he's being insensitive and pushing me to go somewhere I'm not respected again. Am I the jerk for telling my boyfriend I don't want to go to his family's holiday after they met me and it felt like they questioned my worth for hours? Am I the jerk for refusing to help save my mother's house that my dad and stepmom kicked me out of? My dad, stepmom, stepbrother, and I were living in the house my mother originally owned. I moved out after my stepbrother took the box that had all of his mother's jewelry out of his mother's closet and concealed it inside my closet. I had no idea about it until my stepmom walked into my room and asked me one more time if I still insisted on not letting my stepbrother share the car my dad gave me. I said no, and she said, "Okay then casually walked to my closet, opened it, pulled out her jewelry box, and started yelling. I freaked out, asking her what was going on. Dad came into the room and she started crying, claiming I stole her entire jewelry box and was planning to sell it. I was stunned. I swore I didn't steal anything, yet my dad didn't believe me. My stepmom demanded I get out of the house, and I had to leave because of the pressure. My stepbrother admitted to putting the box inside my closet and bragged about it. I lived with my uncle for 7 years. I missed my room, backyard, and my mother's memories in that house. My stepbrother took over everything. My dad didn't attempt to connect for years and kept calling me thief until recently when I visited my uncle's and he happened to be there. He looked thin and exhausted. He said he found out my stepmom set me up and apologized for not believing me then. He said he forgave her and hoped I'd forgive him because he won't forgive himself if I don't. He then talked about having debts and needing money to pay off debts or he'd lose the house and asked to borrow money from me. I got quiet. Then I asked, why can't they sell the jewelry they accused me of stealing? The car he took back. Heck, where's my stepbrother when they need him? My dad shook his head and asked if my mom would want for me to see him homeless with no help, or worse, see the house she built and her memories there go to waste. I said I won't pay after they kicked me out of my mother's house because stepmom didn't want me there. You must be wondering where my stepbrother is now. He's passed on. He moved to another town, became a police officer for 4 years. He conned people out of their money and houses. He robbed people blind, took possession of their legal documents, and falsified them to his own benefits. He passed suddenly at the age of 33, so he didn't enjoy his ill-gotten gains for long. My dad and uncle agreed that by paying, I'm saving my mother's house, but it's no longer her house after my stepmom turned it into a shrine for her son, who she calls a hero, and used my room as storage for his things. When I walked in for the first time after years, I felt nothing. The connection is no longer there. I still refused to pay, and we had an argument, then I left. My uncle is saying I'm making a mistake by thinking irrationally and in a spiteful manner, and should consider that my dad and stepmom are helpless, sick, grieving, and need help. Am I the jerk?
Click this button to join as a channel member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.